Walton Valley and the Walton Valley and Truckee Railroad. Soon after the end of the Civil War, an ex-soldier headed off from his home in North Carolina on his way to the promise of adventure in California. Captain Jeb Walton had served admirably for the South, but was tired and worn out from all the fighting and disharmony he had experienced, and was looking to start a new life out west. It would be a long journey, but the trails were well entrenched by that time, so he packed up a wagon, grabbed his new puppy Jake, and set out, not knowing for sure what he was in for, but excited nonetheless. At 40 years of age, a recent widower, he sold his farm, leaving behind his daughter and son, who were young adults by then, and into their own lives and families. The year was 1866. When the wagon train got into Fort Hall, Idaho, he met up with a fellow adventurer out of Wyoming, Ben Hermes. Ben was on his way to meet a friend who was working at one of the many gold mines in Virginia City, Nevada. That sounded like a good place to start his new life. So Jeb decided to tag along with Ben and go see about some gold. They soon became the best of buddies and both looked forward to exploring the West. On the way, the pair found themselves in a poker game at the Tahoe Club in Reno, Nevada. Also in the game was a scruffy character named Slim Jones, who had boasted about having found a vein of silver in the mountains near Truckee. As it played out, against impossible odds, on the final hand when the players flipped their cards in the showdown, both Jeb and Ben held royal flushes, while Slim showed a full house. Slim accused them of cheating and went for his gun. Jeb, very experienced from his Civil War stint, was a bit faster and sent Slim on his way to Boot Hill. In the pot was the map of the silver vein location which Slim, short of cash, had used to call the other two. They felt the map was probably worthless, but nonetheless maybe a bit drunk from all the whiskey allowed him to use it in a call. Since they both showed royal flushes, they decided to split the pot, including a promise to equal partner if they found anything at the map location. After a day to sober up, they split from the train and staked themselves with a kit, headed off to the mountains of Truckee, on with the adventure. It took a while to find a spot that seemed to match the map, but they soon found themselves scouring the hillsides looking for something promising. After a month or so of work, they found a small opening that led to a sort of cave. In the wall at the back of the small cave, a couple of feet above the floor, they spotted what must have been Slim's find. It appeared to be a significant vein of pure silver with other smaller flashes close by. Excited beyond belief, but skeptical, since they really knew nothing about mining, they decided to keep things quiet. The plan was to take some samples to Ben's trusted friend in Virginia City for assay. Ben headed off to see his friend, while Jeb stayed behind to keep an eye on things and start building a camp. After a couple of weeks, Ben was back at the site and found Jeb beavering away and making improvements on the chance that the find was real. Having found his trusted friend Zachary in Silver City, Ben had had the samples assayed. They indeed had found silver, and very pure at that. They had no idea just how far the vein might reach, but were certainly eager to find out. Zachary, pledged to secrecy, was heading their way with a wagon load of materials needed to get started excavating. Zachary would help them get going, since he was an old hand at such things, having played the gold and silver fields all the way back to the rush of '49. The mine developed pretty quickly since the silver ore was relatively easy to get to in the beginning. Zachary was a big help and was paid handsomely for his guidance and work. Not wanting to alert others to their find, they decided to ship the findings to Sacramento, where Ben would set up an office and shop, leading others to believe the ore was coming from sources other than the Royal Flush mine. Zachary would bring the ore down from the site and take it to Ben in the still of the night so as not to expose their find. Jeb would stay behind to work the mine and guard the site while Zachary was away. This scheme worked pretty well, and soon the partners found themselves wealthy. They continued to build their bank while keeping low profiles, only allowing a jaunt into San Francisco once in a while to celebrate their great fortune. Thus was born what was to eventually become Walton Valley. The year was 1869. Over time, having secured enough money to last several lifetimes and no longer concerned with exposure, the partners opened things up and others began to arrive in the area. Though successful to a degree, none of the other claims were nearly as rich as the Royal Flush Mine. However, the town, now known as Walton Valley, began to slowly develop. It remained small, however, due to the terrain and the fact that at the time there was no other commerce there except for the mining and a bit of lumber for the support structure in the mines. Jeb brought his daughter, Lucy Barron, and her boys out to Walton Valley in 1871. Lucy had recently divorced and so had no real ties to North Carolina any longer. She took over the big house that Jeb had built in town and started up a boarding house. Lucy and Jeb moved into the new home he had built up above the town in the meadow area near his fishing pond. Her boys, Anthony and Houston, were very industrious and both began working around the various businesses that had sprung up in Walton Valley. 20 years later, in 1891, Jeb's great-grandson, Maxwell, Houston's son, was 17. Jeb, Houston, and Maxwell all decided that Maxwell should go back east to school. Maxwell earned his degree in engineering from Duke University in 1894. By that time, Zachary was getting old and decided he had had enough of running the mine operations. He figured to pull up and head out to San Francisco to retire in grand fashion before he got too old. Having worked in and around the mine for many years, Jeb decided that Maxwell, fresh back from his education stint, should now take over direction of the mining operations. With his newfound expertise in engineering, Maxwell greatly increased the efficiency of the mine. A year later, in 1895, with Jeb's financial backing, Maxwell decided to set up a flume operation. He wanted to bring down cordwood from the forests above the town for the ever-expanding railroads. He had seen a flume in operation around Carson City during one of his business trips to Virginia City. He and Jeb established M.W. Enterprises, Maxwell, Walton, Barron. This entity eventually became a holding company for the many endeavors that Maxwell would develop over the years. In early 1897, a fellow named Johnny Walker showed up in Walton Valley. Johnny was a lumber baron who had heard about Maxwell's cordwood company and thought that he would explore to see if Maxwell might entertain a partnership so that they could also set up a lumber mill and begin producing finished lumber to cater to the growing greater Truckee area. Maxwell consulted with Jeb and they decided to begin such an enterprise in earnest. They built a new lumber mill near the drop-off cordwood pond and diverted some of the river running nearby and created a new pond to collect the tree harvest. Soon the mill was producing many board feet of outstanding quality. Two companies were created, the J.W. Lumber Company and the J.W. Cordwood Company, named so since Johnny held the majority interest. In early 1898, Maxwell then decided to invest in electricity for the town and installed a large generator driven by a water wheel in the river gorge west of the city. The river ran strong all year, so it was a terrific source to provide power. He created the Maxwell Electric and Power Company. Walton Valley was one of the very first towns west of the Mississippi to have electricity available for the citizenry. With the silver mine still running strong, along with the cordwood and lumber interests producing, Maxwell, the Waltons, the Barons, and the town were quite well off. In late 1898, Maxwell found out that the Virginia and Truckee Railroad Company were having some cash flow difficulties and were looking to divest some of their assets. Maxwell brought this news to Jeb, now 73 years old, but still involved in most of the town's activity, and still having fun working with Maxwell on all the adventures he was into. The two saw this as a great opportunity. They offered to buy the track and all the associated right-of-way for the spur from Truckee over to Walton Valley. In addition, they decided to see if the railroad might be interested in selling one of their locos. The Virginia and Truckee Railroad accepted their offer, and after a bit of haggling, the boys were now into the railroad business too. They named the new railroad company the Walton Valley and Truckee Railroad.